All 6 Japanese events have now been cleared, and as a result, we are now more or less a third of the way there with this game, but we still have so many more things to go. And the next of those things we're going to get started with will be the European events. After I used my Nissan Fairlady Z Concept LM race car to sweep up the 2 races I didn't win in the All Japan GT Championship, and I do accept those losses, as I should. We are now going to get on with the first of our European events, and that is the British Lightweights. And I know just the car to use for this. We're using the Janata, because I want to. Also because, well, I think it's the perfect choice for our next event. So, yeah. Also, just before we move on, there's something else I should get whilst I'm here from the 80s dealership. And that's this. The Isuzu Piazza XE. Now, why am I buying this thing? Well, it'll make sense a bit later on in the game. There is a good reason for me buying this, because we may need it for one of the one-make events, especially since no other Isuzu models are up for sale yet. So I figure I might as well take the wise choice and buy it out. So yeah, okay. Back to business, and let's begin the European events with the British Lightweight Series. So these are our regulations. The Janata pretty much fits all of these for the British Lightweight Series, and we are doing 2 laps around each of these tracks as we're going to Autumn Ring, Apricot Hill, and Special Stage Route 5. And so, without further ado, let's go. Okay, we need upgrades on this thing, and we need them now. It's probably the only way I will realistically catch that Lotus Elise up front. So I'm going to start off by putting on Stage 1 engine tuning, and also putting on the racing chip. I reckon a suspension might also help me in terms of my handling as well. Oh, that's not where I wanted to go. I'm gonna put on the sport suspension just to make my life easier, and hopefully that should be everything we need from this. No, I think that's everything we need. I know I can close in. I'm just hopeful in saying that the power I have on this thing is enough. So, let's try again with race 1 of the British Lightweights. So we pretty much have the same field again, except for saying this time they're just in different colour schemes. Anyway, I'm convinced in saying we have everything we need now. I made sure this thing was more competitive, plus I also upgraded the suspension as well, so I'd have an easier time of getting through the corners. And hopefully this should be everything we need in order to beat that Lotus Elise Type 72 that is up front. Even though it is a little more horsepower for me to tame, so I might not be able to get through these corners as easily as I did before. But whatever. I needed more power if I was going to beat that Lotus Elise. And I was convinced in saying that was where I lacked thereof. I did also put on a sports suspension just in case. I didn't think more handling was needed, but at this time, I do believe that it was because of my lack of engine power that I ultimately could not motor through the Elise ahead of me. I believe that's what my main concern was. And now that I am ahead of the Type 72 Elise, I'm convinced in saying this might just be easier, as I hit the back of the other Lotus Elise. But anyway, let's try and get through this. So, just have to try and clear the Lotus ahead of me. And both he and the Lotus Elan run wide. And off goes the other Ginetta. From what I just saw there. And the Lotus Elan is what's running up front. Gotta say, that car must be pretty good. And so, we begin our ascent to the front. And the Elan is trying to force me wide. I could definitely tell he was looking for a dive, but he wasn't going to get it. I was more or less clear of him by the time we cleared the spiral. So, I think it's fair to say we pretty much have all the tuning parts we need now, compared to before. But either way, that was a pretty close-fought race. But I am glad to say the additional engine power I put in was able to help me win. And in typical 1960s fashion, the handling physics basically send me into the gravel. But whatever. I expected that. Anyway, didn't have to spend a lot of money to make this car faster, but either way, I did it. I won race 1. Okay, saving the replay now, since I don't have a replay at the full Autumn Ring circuit yet. This might as well be the time to do it, from what I can see. Okay, now we have 2 races left. Let's now move on to race 2. And we are at Apricot Hill Reverse for race 2. And where this time, the 2 Lotus Elises are starting at the back, and at the front we have the Mini Marcos with the Ginetta G4, and in between is the Lotus Elan. So, probably going to be the same as last time. But I think we should be okay with this. Getting a little bit of wheel spin off the launch, but that's what I would have expected. But either way, I think we should be okay with this. I almost won this race on that previous attempt I had. I almost won it. And yet it was literally from just a slight bit of contact that my momentum was basically killed off. I almost had this one by the reins. And it was just a simple touch from the side that killed just enough of my momentum to stop me from winning. That was basically what did me in the end. And it wasn't even through any fault of mine either. I mean, the Ginetta was just loose in front of me, and basically what happened was, well, he basically went wide, and I'm going to assume he must have indirectly hit me when we were probably side by side, and that was basically what caused my one shot of winning to be lost. But I am okay with it, because I'm convinced in saying it was accidental. It was not intentional. It was accidental. I know it felt like when I was right alongside him I did take a whack, but the truth is, I'm pretty sure the contact was accidental. It was not intentional. The only way I would know for sure if it was intentional is if I knew he was gonna quite simply hook me into the wall. But I know that's not gonna be the case. I'm convinced in saying the contact we made was accidental. Either that or he just basically threw a last minute block that somehow worked. Either way, it's fine. There's nothing to worry about. I just have to make sure that I don't fall for the same mistake I fell for last time. And because I'm now putting in a smoother run, it looks more and more like this just might be my race to lose. Because I did make a few mistakes on that previous attempt as well. But this time around, I've got a much clearer run than what I had before. And that's what's helped me to break away at the front of the field. So, 1.8 seconds is virtually the gap. And it looks as though this is where I break away from the rest of the field. And now the Elise is coming through. So I think that tells me this run has gone a lot smoother than the previous run did. Because in the end, I probably gained 4 seconds. Huh, I called that one. 4.5 seconds to be exact. And the Ginetta in the end fell down to 4th. And the Marcos finished as well. Which is cool and good. P2 on my first attempt, P1 on my second attempt, ironically. Alright, final race of the British Lightweight Series, and where, this time, instead of a Mini Marcos, we have got a Triumph Spitfire 1500 in the field. And everything else you would normally expect. Okay, let's go. And compared to our first 2 races, this time we only scored 28. So, I'm convinced in saying this race might be easier, but I'm also convinced in saying that I might get blown out by the Elises on the straights. Because I'm convinced in saying that's where the Elises will be at their strongest. And there will be almost nothing I can do about their superior speed. Unless I can outduel them in the corners, then maybe, but... either way, I am of course daring to be more ballsy in the corners than I am on the straights. That was about as wide as I could possibly get without hitting that outside wall. I was convinced in saying that would have been the nail in the coffin, but somehow I just got away with it. And as I would have expected, the Ginata, the one that beat me at Apricot Hill first time around, is at the front of the field once again. Sorry, I'm trying to think of a Coldplay reference that's probably not going to be relevant now. Anyway, whatever. I am now at the front of the field, and hopefully with possible, this car will take me to Paradise City. Ha 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 ha. Because we're quite literally in Paradise City. Or at least I like to think of it as Paradise City. Yes, that is a Guns N' Roses reference. Even though it's a nighttime city. But whatever, that's by the by. So, looks as though the Ginata is once again holding on to second position, but I don't think is going to fend off that Elise for much longer. My first two races, I did have my struggles, but it's looking more and more like in my third race at least, I should be able to get this one first try, as long as I stay out of the walls long enough to put together the run I need to put together. I really am starting to wonder if engine tuning wasn't needed for this race. Although in saying that, I just hit the outside wall. But then again, so did the other Ginata, so... yeah, I think we're going to be fine here. I think whatever trouble we might have had in this event has long since passed us. I also find it ironic to say that most of the field is just inseparable. But either way, I still win. By 4.4 seconds over the other Ginata. So, I'd say that's equal revenge. Considering that same Ginata beat me last time at Apricot Hill. But either way, I still get another 10 grand, so it's nothing to really make a fuss about. So, once I put the engine tuning on, along with a suspension upgrade, I wound up winning this by nearly 4.5 seconds. And then we had the Lotus Elise in third, the Lotus Elan fourth, followed by the second Lotus Elise, the Type 72, and at the back we had the Triumph Spitfire. Nearly, or virtually, 13 seconds behind me. Already have a replay saved, so we're fine in that department. Let's now go collect our prize. whatever our prize may be. So for winning the British lightweights, we get the Lotus Europa, all in white. This thing looks nice. I'm not gonna lie, I think this thing looks really nice. Quintessentially British, am I right? Anyway, that's our first European event, and I think what we're gonna do next, we'll probably do the German leagues, since they're both single race events, and then we'll get through our set of European events. I think that's what we'll do next. But either way, there we go. We have won the British lightweights, and as a result, we have now gained 0.5% of progress, as we're now officially a third of the way there. Win percentage has gone down again, but that's what I expected. And for our first European event, I drove 23.7 miles in this thing. Okay, let's go find our Lotus. And here it is. In, ironically, Cirrus White, we get the Lotus Europa Special. However, I'm not going to be using this thing immediately, because we have other events to get through first. But that's what we get for winning the British lightweights. Cool. So that's our first European event down, and next time we will be moving on to German League A, coming in the next episode.